self-sacrificing, and not anything like that. It has become the hardest practical politics to let go control to others, to give up trying to dominate the scene. Also, in a parallel way, it has become at this time in our history very much hard practical politics. To learn how to enjoy ourselves. You can go to the Protestant people with their Protestant ethic who are against this kind of thing, and now say to them with great glee, it is your solemn duty to learn how to enjoy yourself. Why? Because in an age of leisure, people have really got to know how to enjoy themselves. Because if they don't, they'll smash the whole future of the human race. So a utopia has become not some sort of a dream, but an urgent necessity. We can't do without it. Because if we try to do without it, what's going to happen is that we are going to terminate our race in a mutual massacre of scapegoats. And so the present paranoia in the United States that is going on, where everybody is thinking up a new scapegoat and how great it will be to demolish them or get them out of power, all this kind of bickering and right and left politics has become irrelevant. Because we now have the opportunity of trusting our own intelligence, our own technology. To take the risk of doing what we want, which will work to the extent that we realize that what I want, basically, what I really want is what you want. And I don't know what you want. It surprised me. But that's the kinship between I and thou. So when I ask, I go right down to the question, which we started with. What do I want? The answer is, I don't know. When Bodhidharma was asked, who are you? Which is another form of the same question. He said, I don't know. Planting flowers to which the butterflies come. Bodhidharma says, I know not. I don't know what I want. And when you don't know what you want, you've reached the state of desirelessness. When you really don't know. But you see, there's a beginning stage of not knowing, and there's an ending stage of not knowing. In the beginning stage, you don't know what you want because you haven't thought about it, or you've only thought superficially. Then when somebody forces you to think about it and go through and say, yeah, I think I'd like this, I think I'd like that, I think I'd like the other, that's the middle stage. Then you get beyond that. Say, is that what I really want? In the end you say, no, I don't think that's it. I might be satisfied with it for a while, and I wouldn't turn my nose up at it. But it's not really what I want. Why don't you really know what you want? 2 reasons that you don't really know what you want. Number 1, you have it. Number 2, you don't know yourself, because you never can. The Godhead is never an object of its own knowledge. Just as a knife doesn't cut itself, fire doesn't burn itself, light doesn't illumine itself. It's always an endless mystery to itself. I don't know. And this I don't know uttered in the infinite interior of the spirit. This I don't know is the same thing as I love, I let go, I don't try to force or control. It's the same thing as humility. And so the Upanishads say, if you think that you understand Brahman, you do not understand, and you have yet to be instructed further. If you know that you do not understand, then you truly understand. For the Brahman,
potential coming from physics, you will consider the Gibbs potential, something like exponential minus v of x dx. Many possibilities, but you may be interested in counting the entropy with respect to a measure which is non-uniform. And what do we do with this? So first, there is a clear statistical interpretation. Entropy tells you if a given statistical distribution is rare or very common. And it is the information here that will tell you if it is very common. To have something that is very common is when this h will be as low as possible. Entropy as high as possible. And also it's classical that in many respects, when you look at distributions of the maximum of entropy, you will have Gibbs distributions, you will have Gaussian distributions, and this plays a major role in statistical physics in equilibrium. Just to quote a few places in which entropy was used in an important way. For instance, since it was a question about the empirical measure in the previous talk, so throw in particles x1, etc., xn, which are IID and low nu, okay? And you write the empirical measure. Mu hat is 1 over n sum of Dirac masses at xi. And we know by law of large numbers, in the long run, this will be an approximation of nu. But which is the probability that I make a mistake? Probability that the empirical measure looks like something than a certain mu rather than nu. What's the probability that I miss the target by reconstructing? Well, it is approximately exponential minus n h nu of mu, which is the relative information of mu with respect to nu. So this shows you that it gives you a measure of discrepancy of one measure with respect to another. And as such, it also plays a major role in statistics, where it is called often Kullback information. Another example of a place in which the entropy is useful, it was used in John Nash's masterpiece on the regularity of diffusion processes. It was also used to give quantitative errors in the central limit theorems. You may think that central limit theorem is, most of us, when we see this in computations, in teaching, is that central limit theorem is related to Fourier analysis. You take Fourier transform, you look at this, etc. But there is a much more beautiful proof going through entropy, in which the Gaussian distribution arises because it is a distribution of maximum entropy for fixed variance. So these are some of the examples. Entropy was also used by Grigory Perelman in his proof of the Poincaré conjecture. It's kind of ubiquitous. So here we are now. I have 0 minutes left to tell about the core of the talk, so I will, in a very rude way, take a few minutes with the authorization of our big boss, Emmanuel. And what is the link between all of this? Was discovered around the end of the 90s that there is a strong link between them, and this was done in a seminal paper by Jordan, Kinderlehrer, and Otto. Which is the link? I will tell it in words. If you consider probability measures on some geometric space, and you know to transport one measure on the other has a certain cost, so there is a transport problem. This transport problem gives you a distance on the probability measures. So you will have a certain distance. Let's take cost to be the square of the distance. And let's take the square root of the cost as a distance on probability measures. So distance between mu and nu being the square root of the optimal cost, with cost c equals d squared of transport cost. So this gives me a metric space. I can apply then the gradient flow procedure with that distance between probability measures. I need an energy function on probability measures. I need two things. I need a distance and I need an energy. Let's take this as the energy, the entropy. And so let's take something, or the information if you want. So let's construct the gradient flow that will minimize the descent for the information. Question, what do you get? Not obvious answer, heat equation. And this is a very general procedure. So heat equation is the gradient flow of the information H for the optimal transport metric. This was a discovery of Jordan Kinderley.
These factors indicate man's sense of incompleteness and emphasize the importance of polarity. Now this again leads to one of the more profound philosophical observations on the subject, namely that polarity lies in the sphere of manifestation rather than in the sphere of substance. Things must physically or objectively appear polarized. But in their nature and substance, all things are in themselves in equilibrium. The spirit of man is forever in equilibrium. Therefore, the spirit of man must be and is an androgyne creature. It possesses within itself the capacity of polarization, but is not polarized except in manifestation. The particular and special polarization that we recognize being essentially physical. Thus, man, as a psychic or spiritual being, has an androgyne core, and in the effort to establish equilibrium in his objective life, he chooses marriage. He selects his mate and attempts in this way to balance his own nature. Both persons in the marriage being actually seeking to balance their own internal lives. Through association, the two individuals are partly restored to their natural androgen state. The man, through association with the woman, becoming more sensitive and having certain vital experiences which would not be possible to him alone in his polarized condition, and the woman vice versa. Therefore, in all instances, again, marriage is an effort to establish equilibrium, which in turn means harmonious organization or integration. And just as the moderation of the mind is necessary for creativity on a spiritual level, so the union or moderation of opposites on the physical level is necessary for the generation of the human being physically. So our law of polarity operates also on these levels. The law of polarity has its polarization in our psychic lives, in our mental and in our consciousness and conscience. On the psychic level, the polarization again is this struggle between internals and externals, in which the individual is either an extrovert or an introvert. The extrovert moving excessively outward, the introvert moving excessively inward. Moderation meaning both a rich internal and external life, a situation difficult to attain. On the mental level, the equivalent of the extrovert is the so-called concrete thinker, the person whose mind is directed toward achievement of some objective in the physical or visible universe. The abstract thinker is one whose mental life is turned to the invisibles, to the creativities, to the philosophies, religions, sciences, arts, where the greater amount of subjective intellect is employed. Either polarization without compromise or complement from the other can lead to excessive imbalance. And a large part of psychological imbalance is simply due to the individual moving too far in one direction and thereby violating the law of equilibrium. It is therefore important that every person with heavy physical responsibilities should have artistic, aesthetic, cultural, avocational releases. It is also important that the idealist and the dreamer and the mystic should have physical responsibilities by which he is assisted to maintain equilibrium and balance in his conduct. That is one of the reasons why it has always seemed very unwise, and from my experience it has been proven so, for individuals to attempt to depart from responsibilities in search of higher ideals. These higher ideals should be built upon responsibilities, upon the victorious and complete acceptance of duty, and not upon a running away from the need of man to serve the unknown need of God. These things must work together, must cooperate, and build toward a proper picture and a proper pattern. Now, out of these principles, out of this law of polarity leading to equilibrium, which is a great silence, comes another law, which is perhaps one of the most pleasant and the gentle laws that we have to contemplate in life. And that is the law which we call harmony and rhythm. Now, in nature, as Havelock Ellis realized, life is a kind of dance. Life is a magnificent motion. The Chinese Taoist, in his concept of Tao, or universal being, recognized truth, God, reality, the road, all of the mysterious principles which he gathered into the term Tao. He recognized these as the great Ku, or the eternal sound that goes on forever. And he also recognized this principle